So, Catherine, did you want to kick things off?
Yes, I will kick things off. I'm just making sure Holly's all set. So this is a work session for the board with agency staff. Attendees from the public are welcome to observe. The chat function, as well as the attendee cameras and microphones, will be turned off. If you would like to submit public comment, please do that through the Aviation website for the October 5th board meeting. And with that, we will kick it off with Kenji talking just some information about electrification and advanced and urban air mobility. Kenji.
Great. Good morning, everybody. Hello from sunny Las Vegas, where Alex Thomas and I are at Commercial UAV, which is a conference down here. So uh, I'm going to try to keep things fairly short because it is a work session. And what we're going to do is really start out with a really brief update in terms of what's going on. And part of that will be some updates in terms of the electrification and uncrewed aircraft and what's going on in that sphere, as well as in how we are getting involved in that. So with that, if you could pop over to the next slide, please. Holly? There we
Can
go.
you see that?
Yep.
Okay, by the
All's good.
Can you
One
hear
of the
me?
things, yeah, we can hear you. A-okay. So that's
Okay, I just
perfect.
wanna make sure. Okay, thank
One
you.
of the priorities that I've been mentioning since the last meeting is that I've been trying to visit all the airports. And because it's very important to visit all the airports to see what it's like on the ground. And since the last report that I gave, these are all the additional airports that I've been able to visit. So as you can see, it spans from all the way in the southwest corner of the state, all the way to the northwest, and then all the way to the northeast. So we've been pretty busy. And what's fantastic is we've been able to visit with some of the stakeholders at a lot of these airports as well, and also legislators at a lot of these airports as well. And in fact, about a month ago, we did an Eastern Oregon trip and we got to meet with some legislators on the ground as well. So both representatives, Representative Halfrich was absolutely fantastic. He greeted us out in Cascade Locks and then also visited with him in the Dells, and then also met with him again last week in Hood River, which was another great visit as well. So we have a number of airports to still visit, and that includes some of the Port of Portland properties there, uh, Steve. So we promise we'll get out there as well. So next slide, please. And Holly, as soon as that pops up, oh, perfect. And then I just want to give an update on some of the significant priorities we've had. Oak Ridge is at the top of our list, and that's still ongoing. Our policy advisor is meeting, I think, this week, or it occurred last week, with our federal delegation. So Kelly Brooks has been in touch, and there's some significant interest in making sure that we get money from the feds on this. So that's underway. Those discussions are underway and are happening actively as well. The resiliency project that it's due at the end of the year is still in progress as well. Betty's been working hard at that. Some major chapters are done. So a lot of stakeholders will be continually being involved in the process. So you'll continue to hear from her as well. One of the big priorities that we've had is making sure that we fill the planning position, because that's been a big hole in our staffing. We're anticipating that we might have a hire next week. So we are very pleased to fill that position with somebody who's very qualified and will be a great addition. They'll be a familiar face likely. We did have that position reopen for internal hire. So that'll just give you a hint on that. The strategic planning also is a very big priority for us, and wanted to give you an update on that. The RFP was sent to potential vendors for strategic planning, and we're hoping and anticipating bids in the next couple of weeks. Kristen did a great job of pulling together that RFP document and that was sent out as well. Another priority is making sure that we have a quorum, right? So we get business done. So there's been 3 names submitted for confirmation, and on call is Bill Grawl. So congratulations on your nomination. Jim Knight, who is on the call, congratulations on your nomination. And then Jeff Pritchard, who might be familiar to a lot of folks out there. He's been nominated as well. I don't know if he's on this call or not, but I got to meet with him at the conference yesterday and had a great discussion with him as well. All right, next slide, please. As I noted, on the UAS side, Alex Thomas and I had the wonderful opportunity to attend the FAA UAS and AM Summit in Baltimore. That was a number of weeks ago. Some great conversations that we had with a lot of FAA individuals, as well as some potential vendors that we might be working with as well. Great networking opportunity, and Alex was able to learn a lot. And at this point, I'd love to be able to give Alex the opportunity to chat or give his summary about some of the observations he made about the summit as well. So,
hello,
Alex.
and good morning, everybody. And hopefully there's not too much background noise still here at the a different conference. But yeah, the FAA UAS Symposium and AAM Summit was a great learning experience for me. And it was really provided a firsthand opportunity to look into and for best practices around working with federal regulators and industry, and of course on the state level, and then how we can ensure that all of our stakeholders are in the room at the same time and involved in our discussions moving forward with policies. And some of the bullet points of what's been presented and discussed at UAS conferences has been, critical infrastructure inspections and how to use UAS technology to do that, law enforcement, delivery, future look into artificial intelligence systems within the UAS industry and how to best provide safety solutions, and then the best practices around beyond visual line of sight. And so those are just a couple of bullet points, and it's been a great learning experience for me, and I've learned a lot working with Kenji on these issues and meeting with the federal regulators and industry representation.
Great. Awesome. Thanks, Alex. So I want to let you know that the counter UAS ARC meetings are still underway. So I can't talk much about that, but I just want to say that they are ongoing, and it looks like the report to the FAA will be done on time, September, October timeframe. The department also was involved in discussions with NASAO on advanced air mobility. NASAO provided some feedback to the FAA on advanced air mobility, and we included our comments in that as well. The other piece too is we had an initial meeting of some stakeholders within Oregon talking about advanced air mobility. It was just a small group, and we were looking at strategic planning around that, but at this point, we're going to hold off a little bit because our priority is going to be that strategic planning. And there's some other initiatives that are ongoing that we will likely be involved with, CAMI as well, which is the Community Air Mobility Initiative. Yolanda is the head of that. It's out of Seattle. And there's some interesting news that we'll be able to share later as well on that. One of the things that we're also going to be doing is we're going to be bringing back the UAS task group that was around a number of years ago that brought together stakeholders, legislators, and other folks in the industry as well, just to start that discussion, getting best practices out there, talking also with the legislature about what we can do to help things in terms of legislative side, some positive legislation that can be passed to help the industry as well. I also want to bring up that if you didn't know, the FAA Administrator the potential FAA Administrator Mike Whitaker was nominated today He is currently the Supernal Chief Operating Officer. So Supernal is an advanced air mobility a company that is tied in with Hyundai out of Korea. So that's big news. And then at Commercial UAV, it was also announced there will be some news regarding remote ID in the next few days. So I know there's a number of stakeholders that are concerned about remote ID and its implementation schedule. That looks like there is going to be a change. I can't tell you exactly what it is until they tell us, but expect some news in the next couple of days. One of the other things I also want to mention on the new technology side was as I mentioned, you might not have heard that, but I got to meet with the Tillamook test range and the Pendleton test range, and then also the Alaska Fairbanks folks as well. And we're having initial discussions on how to potentially set up corridors within the state of Oregon to really start looking into air cargo delivery. And one of the interesting points that was discussed during these discussions with Alaska Fairbanks folks is how to set up the infrastructure to enable that. And what's really nice about the framework that the Alaska Fairbanks folks were talking about is setting up infrastructure that would also benefit general aviation as well and commercial aviation. And that's traditional aviation. Because once you set up, for example, weather, other sensors, that can directly benefit other users such as GA, because weather's important to everybody. And once we start getting that, that's going to start enabling some of the advanced operations around air cargo, advanced air mobility. So that's going on. There might be ways to get pay for it through smart grants from the US DOT. We're engaging in discussions on that as well. So that's in brief is some of the discussions around the new technologies that we're considering and we've been talking about as well. So next slide, please. On the administration side, one of the big things that we're talking about is aircraft registration. I was involved in a conference call with the AMS team up in Washington, and we participated in a presentation by a virtual tower. This is not in essence a virtual tower where there be air traffic services provided virtually. Rather, this is more having to deal with getting accurate traffic counts, getting information about traffic counts, what planes are flying in, to really figure out if we're missing out on any registrations. So they offer some services that could potentially assist us with aircraft registration. We had some great discussions. I'm meeting with the folks out at Naseo in Arkansas as well. And then on the administration side, as I mentioned, we had great meetings with legislators in district during the airport visits. And then as soon as we get that planning position filled, we're looking at reviewing programs and areas of responsibility just to make sure that we have the right functions in the right departments that make sense for the agency. And then also then on the administrative side, we're continuing meetings with stakeholders as well. So doing a lot of outreach, just stopping by, saying hi, finding out what concerns are. One of the most recent ones we had was with Joseph, and that was actually very productive. And it was great to see Sarah out there as well. Okay, so next slide, please. So this is more information in terms of what you can expect upcoming as well. There's going to be probably some significant rulemaking coming up that will kick off in October. So this is just a heads up. There'll likely be rulemaking around vertiports language, and that was legislation that was passed this past legislative session. The VPD rule that's been in play for a while. And then we're also looking at regulatory review, what KPMs were held to and what's really working and what's not. For example, should we be held to a standard of obstructions on airports that we don't even manage? So there's items like that we need to really take a deep dive and look at. Does it make sense for the agency? Is it things, are there things in there that we can't control that really we should be held accountable for? Or are there things that we should be held accountable for that we're really not? So that is ongoing. And then next slide, please. The core program is looking for some housekeeping rulemaking as well. Both Andrea and Alex will be helping us through that process. They've requested some rulemaking around just the order of funding and grants, and that has to deal with the FAA grants as well. And as you see in the slide, just looking through our OARs to make sure there's necessary administrative clarifying changes. So in essence, those are some of the rulemakings that we're looking forward to. And at that point, my presentation's done. Does anybody have any questions?
Just a couple of comments. Kenji, thank you very
Sure.
much.
Yeah.
First off, congratulations on visiting 30 airports. That is an achievement just in itself in the last
Total 50.
Well, I know total, but I'm just saying since we last saw, I read 30 different ones there. So congratulations on visiting 30 airports in that month time frame. That's amazing. The other is as the work continues on counter UAS and more information becomes available, I think that'd be great to be able to share with the board. And
Yep.
I think it's a challenge that everybody is potentially facing, whether you're a small airport or a large airport, and just understanding the working group and what's going on with that would be beneficial, I think. So an update on that in the future would be helpful as that rulemaking or as that comes out.
Exactly, and one of the conditions of participation in the ARC is that we have to keep our lips sealed,
right,
because we can't contaminate the process. So I imagine you've been through. Have you been on an aviation rulemaking committee, Steve?
I have not,
forget.
no, but I'm
Okay.
familiar with the process.
Yeah. So there's some secrecy involved until we get through it, unfortunately.
Right, but
Yep.
when you do, I think it'd be beneficial for the board and everyone in the state to hear about that as well.
Absolutely. We'll give a full brief out, and I'll be able to go through the recommendations that come out of the Aviation Rulemaking Committee as well. And because I think you are absolutely right. It's a critical component, especially for critical infrastructure that includes power plants, airports, and I know it's a significant concern with airports as well as our partners in law enforcement and wildfire
Emergency
fighting.
services, yeah, all
Exactly.
level of whether it's wildland or urban firefighting.
Yep.
Yeah,
You got
thank
it.
you. Thank you.
Yeah, very good. Any other questions or comments? Kenji, yeah, that's great news about the Oak Ridge Airport effort. I think that's really important work, and I'm really glad to see that our legislature is taking that seriously and looking for some solutions around that. And then also great work on advanced air mobility. I think you're right. This is going to impact every airport of every size. So it's going to be an exciting time, but also a time that we really want to be engaged and make sure we're making good decisions moving forward about how we're integrating that into both our airspace and our airports. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and a quick note on that. One of the things that I want to emphasize is there's been a lot of discussions about leveraging existing infrastructure. So what do we already have? A lot of airports, right? We don't want to be building, having vertiports all over the place, because I think that would be an absolute mess. So the initial ConOps or concept of operations we've been discussing is really air cargo, because I think that's a really compelling piece, especially in terms of resiliency. If you think about it, air cargo could be used for if there's a cascaded subduction event. Air cargo could be used to be sent into a lot of these areas that could be potentially impacted, especially along the coast and stuff. So there's a lot of operations that could happen that have a resiliency component, and also environmental component, removing vehicles from the road, just increasing the efficiency and also of our transportation system, and really improving transportation in Oregon. So.
Very good. All right. Well, thank you for that report. I appreciate that. We will move on to the next item on the agenda, which is a brief on the best practice survey, those results which are measured as one of the agency's key performance measures as part of our annual progress report. And so Kristen Forrest is going to walk us through that. Kristen?
Oh, yeah. So I'm just going to give you a brief on the board survey. So can you see my screen? Yes. Okay,
Yes.
perfect. Okay, so the Aviation Best Board Practice Survey. So that's one of our key performance measures. And so it is number 7, one of our KPMs. So it's the percent of best practices met by the board. And so I am going to be sending out a survey to the current board members. So Catherine, Sarah, and Steve, you're going to be getting that survey from me this week. So I just kind of wanted to go over the questions so you know what to expect and you know how to answer them. And then just see if you have any questions on the questions. So these questions for the survey, they actually weren't made by us. DAS and LFO came up with these. And so they go out to all of the boards in Oregon. And they're based on best management practices for boards and commissions. So they base it on these 5 functions here, that the executive director selection, expectations, and feedback, strategic management, strategic policy development, fiscal oversight, and board management. So these are the 15 questions that you'll see in the survey. So I just kind of wanted to briefly go over them so you kind of understand what they are. So the first 2 are about the executive director's performance and expectations and their performance feedback. So the board does an annual performance feedback review for the director, and they check the expectations, and we usually do this every fall. Question number 3 is the agency's mission and high-level goals are current and applicable. Number 4 is the board reviews the annual performance progress report. So this report is based on the key performance measures that Kenji was talking about a little bit. And so this survey is part of those key performance measures. So at the next board meeting, I will go over that report with the board, and you go over that every year. So number 5 and 6 is just about the board being appropriately involved in review of agency's key communications and policymaking activities. Number 7 is the agency policy option packages are aligned with their mission and goals. So these are our POPs that we develop at the beginning of the budget development process. So the board helps us develop those POPs and reviews them and then also approves those. And then those go through the whole legislative process. And then if they're approved, then they go into our budget as well. Number 8, the board reviews all proposed budgets. So you do review and you also vote on and approve those budgets. Number 9, the board periodically reviews key financial information and audit findings. So as you know, I do periodically do presentations on the finances of the agency. And then if we have any audit findings, I share those with you as well. Number 10, the director is appropriately accounting for resources. Number 11, the agency adheres to accounting rules and other relevant financial controls. So we do, and if you have any questions about those, you can ask me. Number 12 and 13 are about the board members acting in accordance with their roles and coordinating with others when interests overlap. Number 14, the board members identify and attend appropriate training sessions, and the agency helps the board attend those training sessions and sets those up for you. And then number 15, the board reviews its management practices to ensure best practices are utilized. So after we get the results of the survey, we'll go over those at the next board meeting so that we can talk about the best management practices. So you can expect this week an email from me, and then I'll have a link to the survey in SurveyMonkey. And it's a really quick survey to fill out. I have to submit the report at the beginning of October, so if you can get it done right away, that helps me out to get my deadline for the report. And if you're going through it and you have any questions, just contact me or Kenji, and we can help you with that. But does anyone have any questions about the board best practices? Yes, Catherine, do you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question about, so we've talked, number one and number two, executive director's performance and receives annual performance feedback. So of course, obviously we have a new director. And so when we're evaluating that this year, are we evaluating in the past, or are we just not addressing those this year, or what's your recommendation?
My recommendation would be to evaluate the new director, because I think that would help. He could take that feedback going forward. I know it's going to be a little hard since he is brand new and just has, I guess we'll have a few months at that time, but I think that would be best to evaluate Kenji. Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. And then just for my own knowledge, do you put that reminder out for the board chair to remember to get that process going?
Oh, yes. Yep. I can help you with that. Definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay.
Very good.
Is there any other questions? Okay.
Great. Thank you, Kristen. Appreciate
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And then Kenji, unless we have other items, I think we're kind of wrapping this work session up, unless there's anything else anyone wants to talk about.
Kristen, did you have, was there any other reports that you needed to give? I'm trying to remember.
No, that was all that I had.
Okay. Yeah, nothing from my side. I believe in efficiency, so.
Very good. Well, this was very informative. So I'll just do a little reminder that our next meeting dates are October 4th for the planning session and executive session, and that is hosted in Hillsborough. And then also October 5th, the board meeting will be in Hillsborough as well. So thanks to Steve Nagy for hosting us.
We look
Okay.
forward to it.
All right, very good. Okay, well, I guess if there is nothing else for the good of the order, looks like Kristen or Holly's bringing up our next schedule, so we can see that. And then I guess, just putting it out there that we'll need to be thinking about what kinds of work sessions we want to have for 2024. We've got a few listed already, and so I'm sure that's something that we'll be working on at the next board meeting. So be thinking about the kinds of topics you'd like to hear about or revisit. All good stuff. All right. Well, great. Very good. Nice to see everybody. Very productive work session. Thank you, Kenji and Kristen and staff. And we will see y'all in person in October.
Yay, see ya.
Thank you all.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.